Doom, The Dark Ages. Oh boy, let me tell you, I've been super excited to talk about this one. Right off the bat, I want to say that I absolutely loved most of this game. Not all of it, we'll get to those bits later, but the core essence of Doom, The Dark Ages, I was totally into it. That said, I'm expecting this to be a pretty divisive entry in the Doom pantheon. To understand why, let's take a quick trip down memory lane with Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, because hindsight has given us some clarity about both games. Doom 2016 laid down a blueprint that many of us, myself included, thought was flawless, like perfect in every way. The gameplay, soundtrack, visuals, storytelling, an absolute masterpiece. 11 out of 10, no notes. Then along comes Doom Eternal, looking like Doom 2016 but better on paper. It had a grapple, it was faster, more weapons, more story, everything from 2016 plus shiny new toys. Obviously better, right? Well, not exactly. These two games were actually quite different beasts. Some folks, like me, weren't huge fans of the focus on weapon swapping, the Marauder, or the more in-your-face storytelling. Others thought these were all straight upgrades, and that Eternal's more demanding combat loop was Doom at its absolute peak. These two perspectives duked it out for a while before everyone finally realized it wasn't about one being objectively better. It was about personal preference. Some players just vibed more with 2016, others with Eternal, for totally legitimate reasons, and that's fine. I'm bringing all this up because, my god, Doom, The Dark Ages is a very different Doom game. This thing is nothing like 2016 or Eternal. Those games had subtle differences that created distinct feels. Dark Ages, there is nothing subtle about these changes. The second you load in, you're like, okay, they were clearly aiming for something completely different here. But I keep coming back to what we learned from Eternal's release. id Software hits an extraordinarily high quality bar, that's undeniable, so how much Dark Ages clicks with you will likely come down to personal preference, except maybe the dragon stuff, but we'll get to that soon. Let me break down what I experienced in this preview. About 3 hours of gameplay on PC running on an RTX 5080 at 4K, settings on quality, some footage you're seeing is mine, some is provided B-roll playing on hard difficulty, one step above normal, with two even tougher difficulties. I didn't dare try 4 missions. The game's opener, another linear mission, a dragon flying section, and a semi-open world level where I could freely explore. I should flag that my setup had a ton of input lag, no idea why, which definitely made things feel harder, so sorry if some of my footage looks a bit potatoey. Finally, Bethesda capped us at 15 minutes of new gameplay footage, so I've mixed in some reveal trailer and gameplay showcase clips to stay within the rules while still covering everything I want to share. I want to say the day started with a short video where the game's director Hugo Martin outlined the 3 pillars on which Doom, The Dark Ages is built. Doom, The Dark Ages, core gameplay and experience. So let's dive right in. What makes this game tick? There are 3 main pillars to Dark Ages in no particular order. Classically inspired Doom combat, storytelling, expanded worlds for exploration. By now, you've probably seen some Dark Ages gameplay, and it's clearly not Doom Eternal, a game defined by its speed, verticality, and weapon swapping. Fun fact, id Software was actually inspired to make Eternal after seeing someone play Doom 2016 like a Devil May Cry action game. But Dark Ages, it's inspired by something else entirely. The original Doom. Remember that game? It was all about strafing left and right to position yourself and dodge slow-moving projectiles. In the preview intro, Martin described OG Doom as a sort of 3D bullet hell and said one of their goals with Dark Ages was to recreate that feeling. And let me tell you, that term 3D bullet hell is literally the foundation this game's built on. There are tons of mechanics happening at once, but the most central one you'll constantly return to is dodging orange projectiles and parrying green projectiles to reflect them back. Sometimes you're dodging simple slow-moving stuff you can jump over. Other times, you're reflecting back hit-scan style attacks that demand perfectly timed button presses, like when you're riding the dragon. Sometimes the green attacks you need to parry are melee attacks, like when you're piloting the giant Pacific Rim-style mech. Yes, you absolutely get to pilot a giant mech in Doom, The Dark Ages. How cool is that? But most often you're dancing between a mix of orange and green projectiles, positioning yourself to reflect the green stuff back for maximum damage and setting up big melee finishes. These scorpion enemies Beyond the bullet hell. That's just the foundation though. On top of this, it has layered a huge number of game systems that make your abilities and melee attacks as potent as your guns. Honestly, maybe even more potent. Your abilities often act as the key that unlocks an enemy's vulnerability. If you're not mastering these abilities, you're going nowhere fast. The two main abilities are your melee attacks and your shield, and these aren't just glory kills like in previous games. They're actual melee attacks powered by either a gauntlet or a flail you'll unlock later. Each has a 3-hit combo that requires charges to use, and you refill those charges by parrying enemy attacks, which is why parrying is so crucial. These melee attacks do a truckload of damage and are easily the most efficient way to take down enemies. Many baddies have specific weaknesses to melee attacks, like this big boy here. We were told to fight him up close, pairing his attacks to trade melee blows. I ignored that advice at first, just to see what would happen. And yeah, it went badly. Took forever to bring him down because shooting just didn't do much. But when I followed the advice, he dropped very quickly. Your other important ability is your shield, and there's a lot to unpack here. When revealing Dark Ages, I'd specifically said, in Doom Eternal, you felt like a fighter jet. In Doom, the Dark Ages, you'll be an iron tank. Heavy, strong, but still fast. A grounded combat system with an emphasis on power over the acrobatics of Doom Eternal. Even though Martin specifically said the Doomslayer was still fast, I think we all kinda ignored that part and assumed Dark Ages would be slow. But it's definitely not slow. And what gives it pace is the shield. At any point, you can lock onto a distant enemy and, with a button press, streak across the map to shield slam that target, one-shotting smaller enemies and closing the gap to bigger ones so you can set up melee combos. This mechanic really opens up the map, which is crucial because some of these arenas are huge and you need ways to cross space quickly. It's also how you change elevation since enemies up high become makeshift grapple points. It's almost like Grapple 2.0, doing a lot of the same stuff but usable with any weapon equipped, not just the super shotgun. Obviously, the shield also blocks and parries enemy attacks, but the final use is the shield throw. Like your melee attacks and shield slam, this mechanic has tons of applications. It's your primary puzzle-solving tool. It can mow down low-level enemies with ease. It can be used as a stunt where the shield embeds itself in higher-level enemies, ripping at their demonic faces while you deal with other demons. But the most important use? Detonating armor. A ton of enemies in Dark Ages have armor plating that makes them invulnerable to most weapons and melee attacks. But you can shoot this armor to superheat it, and when it glows just the right color, you can detonate it with a shield throw, shattering the armor and making them vulnerable. It's an extremely cool mechanic, especially when you trigger it on a bunch of little shield bros. When one pops, they all pop, and their armor shards fly out like little fireworks. Weapons galore. I haven't even talked about the weapons yet, but yeah, they're awesome too. You've got your standard shotguns and plasma rifles, and the plasma rifle will explode plasma shields for super efficient wave clearing. But then there's whatever the heck this is. A literal ball and chain gun that shoots a giant iron ball, dealing more damage the more you charge it up, with the ball recalled between every shot. It's incredible. So stepping back, we have guns that shoot stuff melee attacks with different weapon options and combos, a shield that's an offensive weapon, armor detonator, and gap closer, projectiles to dodge other projectiles, and melee attacks to parry. And honestly, there's like half a dozen other enemy and environment mechanics I won't even cover because this would be too long. My main takeaway from the combat in Dark Ages is this: 2016 was about shooting your guns. Eternal was about switching between guns and managing your ammo economy. Dark Ages is about using abilities to move and create enemy vulnerabilities that you then exploit with melee attacks. And guns too, of course. You definitely spend less time pulling the trigger in this game than in 2016 or Eternal because you're using those abilities and turning enemies' own attacks against them. And this is why I think Dark Ages might not be everyone's cup of tea. It's so wildly different from both previous games that some folks will just say, that's not for me, and fair enough. Me though, I absolutely loved it. I'm a sucker for bullet hell gameplay. It's one of the many reasons I love Nier, Automata, and Returnal. I also loved how the abilities made combat feel like a puzzle box that needed to be turned this way and that to unlock it. Doom 2016 coined the term combat chess. Enemies with distinct kits that could be combined in different ways. In Dark Ages though, you have way more agency. You're not just responding to what enemies throw at you, you're taking initiative with how you approach each arena, since your broader range of tools gives you plenty of options. There's also less focus on weapon swapping and strict ammo economies. As someone who didn't really enjoy that stuff in Eternal, this definitely appeals to me more, though I imagine those who want a pure gunplay experience might feel a little let down by Dark Ages, since its combat model asks you to do so many different things. It's not much of an exaggeration to say this feels like a first-person melee fantasy game, like Avowed or Skyrim, crossed with Doom. Yeah, you're either going to love that or you're not. Personally, I loved it. Open world and storytelling. I'm super curious to see how hardcore Doom fans feel about the new open world levels Dark Ages offers. I got to experience one during my preview. They're still campaign missions with set objectives, but they're very different from typical Doom levels. They're expansive maps that take a minute or two to walk across with multiple directions to explore, filled with secrets and mini bosses. Completing additional challenges unlocks currency for upgrades or collectibles. This level here is called Siege, and you're seeing so much of it because it's the only level they let me record gameplay from. I liked it, though I didn't think it was that big a change up for the series. Even though it's an open space, it still felt like a number of arenas, just that now I can choose which order to do them in. For me, it felt like the first mission on the Halo ring in the hit game Halo. You could choose which order to rescue those Marines, but the choice didn't really matter all that much. That Halo comparison is going to be a big one when it comes to story. Martin said that story was one of the pillars Dark Ages was built on, and I'm not gonna lie, that made me uncomfortable. I thought 2016's minimalist storytelling was perfection, and it went a little off the rails in Eternal. Now it's like in another galaxy in Dark Ages. Almost literally, the game opens with a lengthy cinematic that is very Halo-coded, with alien races at war and the Doomslayer deployed as a super weapon, just like Master Chief. I only experienced a slice of this story, so I can't fully judge it, except to say I'm more open to it here, because I'd has jumped in with both feet. They're clearly looking to pick up where Halo left off, delivering an action space opera centered on a one-man killing machine. Given how thoroughly 343 fumbled Halo's storytelling, my heart is open to ID having a crack at this style, but I need to see the whole thing unfold before I can fully judge it. The dragon. Yeah, that dragon. Not so with the dragon, where I've already decided I do not like this. To be super clear, Bethesda stressed that dragon riding missions aren't like 50% of the game. This isn't Panzer Dradoom. These missions are just a bit of fun, a bit of pacing, like the turret missions and Call of Duty campaigns. Those are my words, not Bethesda's. In that context, fair enough, but the dragon has this super weird control scheme where you can free fly in all directions, but if you lock onto a target, the controls change, so you move relative to that target. The entire focus is on dodging these green walls so you can supercharge your laser for big attacks. It just doesn't work very well, to be honest. The control scheme isn't great, and riding the dragon should be freaking cool, but when you land, you're like, okay, good, that's over. We're back on the ground. Something has gone wrong when you're looking forward to getting off the sick-looking cyber dragon that breathes fire down enemies' throats to execute them. The tracks I heard sounded great. Fingers crossed the full soundtrack delivers. There's so much more I could mention, but this preview is already packed. This game is incredibly rich compared to the more focused 2016 and Eternal, which could be risky for A, but I love this gameplay loop. Looking at my footage now, I'm genuinely sad I can't keep playing. ID doesn't make bad games, and this is their boldest swing yet. Will Dark Ages be for everyone? Not sure, but I'm super excited to play the full game when it drops May 15th on Xbox, PS5, and PC. Watch for my complete review around launch. Thanks for watching. Catch you soon.